breaking news up on Capitol Hill, where all-night negotiations are dragging on and on right now. Republicans are scrambling to shape President Trump's agenda in his second term. Since 1 a.m., lawmakers on the House Rules Committee have been debating the president's sprawling spending bill with tax cuts, and they're still going at it. This morning, House Speaker Mike Johnson says he's hoping for a floor vote later tonight. But with a razor-thin majority, Republicans are trying to bridge deal-busting divisions within their own party between hardliners and moderates. CNN's chief congressional correspondent, Manu Raju, is at his usual post up on Capitol Hill. Manu, where do things stand at this hour?
Yeah, frantic negotiations behind the scenes happening right now. The Speaker of the House trying to lock down these final deals, particularly with those conservative hardliners who are concerned about the bill, the impact on the deficit, and their belief that it does not cut spending enough. Now, the Speaker has had to manage concerns on both the moderate wing of his party and the conservative wing in the party, but he seems to have alleviated some key concerns among the more moderate members who have been pushing for a greater deduction of state and local taxes that voters can deduct from their annual taxes. They were able to appear to have reached an accommodation, a deal with that group of members, but by allowing for a greater deduction of the so-called SALT taxes that people pay, that has led to an increase in the price tag of the overall bill and caused concerns on the right. Just moments ago, one of those hardliners, Ralph Norman of South Carolina, just told our colleague Sarah Ferris that, quote, things are not going well. And at the moment, the Speaker also talking to other key conservatives, including Congressman Chip Roy, someone who had raised concerns about the deficit and told me just last night that this bill needs to do far more to cut spending.
I have expressed my concern, which is real, that the first 5 years, first 4 years in particular, you end up with significant deficits in those first years. And my experience in this town is that when you're banking on savings in the back half, they don't materialize.
Coming from a swing district, are you worried about the political blowback of endorsing some of these pretty controversial proposals?
Well, the bill's going to look the way it's going to, at the end, get finalized. We've been very clear on where we stand on this. I think we've gotten the bill to a place could have looked much different had myself and others not been advocating for, specifically in the Medicaid area.
And that last comment coming from Juan Ciscomani, a vulnerable House Republican, indicating he seems to be okay with the direction of the bill right now, but it's that conservative wing, Wolf, that is causing some concerns, including a new analysis by the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office last night that estimated the cost of the most recent version of this bill to be at $3.8 trillion and adding to the budget deficit. And that's one issue that members are raising concerns about behind the scenes, Wolf.
I know they are. Manu Raju up on Capitol Hill. Thank you very, very much. President Trump's very massive spending and tax cut bill. Members of the Rules Committee have been meeting since 1 a.m. as Republicans try to win over their last holdouts. This comes as the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office released a preliminary analysis of the bill, finding that it would increase the federal budget deficit by a whopping $3.8 trillion. Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. As you know, some hardline conservatives are warning Speaker Johnson they still aren't on board. House Freedom Caucus Chair Andy Harris says negotiations, quote, actually got worse overnight. What is your sense of where this bill stands right now?
Well, I think, Wolf, there's a reason why there's a war within the Republican Party over this, right? I think you've got a lot of Republicans who realize that this is an assault on our seniors and our children, between the gut and Medicaid, which helps our seniors in nursing homes and our children, especially those who are hungry and need help in health care. The idea of this bill for a lot of Republicans will be devastating in their districts. And so I think you're seeing that tension play out, and there's a good reason for it, Wolf. And it adds, of course, you just pointed out, to the debt. You're talking about $4 trillion, right? So not only is it bad economics, but it's bad policy, and I think that's why you'll continue to see a huge fight as this plays out.
And you mentioned the Congressional Budget Office analysis. It does not necessarily include the latest changes now being negotiated by representatives, but Republicans are already slamming the CBO analysis. Listen to what Congressman Andy Barr said earlier today.
Well, look, first of all, the CBO score is wrong. The CBO has been wrong repeatedly. It was wrong when they scored the first Trump tax cuts. They were wrong by over $1 trillion. Why? Because the CBO doesn't do this scoring dynamically.
How do you respond to that, Congressman?
I mean, it's an independent analysis, right? And what I think they came out and said is this going to hurt the bottom 10%, the worst, right? It's going to hurt children who are hungry. It goes after school breakfast and school lunch. It hurts our seniors and nursing homes, right? So they can try to come up with whatever excuse they want about how this isn't bad, but the bottom line is an independent group has said that looks at the analysis, the economic analysis, this is going to not only lead to the debt, but it's going to be devastating to our families, to women's health care. It's going to lose, as you probably saw also, it's going to gut manufacturing jobs in the United States. So it's going to cost hundreds of plants to shut down, plus hundreds of thousands of jobs. So every way you look at this from every angle, this thing is a huge, devastating problem for the country and for the Republican Party. And I think that's why you're seeing such a big fight internally in the Republican Party.
It's a very big fight indeed. The House Speaker Johnson tells CNN a tentative deal has been reached to quadruple the current state and local tax deduction limit to $40,000. You're the co-chair of a bipartisan caucus on that so-called SALT issue. Are you satisfied with that number?
Well, Wolf, I've heard 3 different numbers this morning already that keeps moving around. My position is pretty clear. We should bring the state and local tax deduction back so that hardworking middle-class Americans don't get taxed twice on the same income. I've always believed that we should go back to the way it used to be in 2017, which would greatly help states like mine, who, as you know, greatly subsidize the red moocher states. We pay a lot more into the federal government than they do, and they get a lot more back. So this makes no sense what's been proposed. I introduced legislation to actually say, you know what, take the SALT issue out of this, let it go back to the way it used to be, let people fully deduct what they pay in state and local taxes so they don't get taxed twice on the same income. I'm talking about cops, firefighters, nurses in New Jersey, teachers. This is about giving relief for teachers in Jersey. And I know these red moocher states, they just want to take from us even more every day. But the bottom line is you got people like me who said absolutely no way. And you have Republican congresspeople from New York and New Jersey in that area who are also saying what they've proposed is absolutely outrageous.
As you know, several hardline Republicans have called raising the so-called SALT, the state and local tax deduction, a bailout of Democrats overspending in blue states, and they say they won't support the change. What's your response to that, and how do you see this very sensitive issue of these SALT deductions playing out?
Well, first of all, Senator Thune made it very clear in the Senate that this is going to be a big issue on their side, which is why I still think this fight is pretty early on. But what do I say to these folks from these, like Mississippi and Alabama get more than $4 for every dollar they send in federal tax dollars to Washington, and states like mine in New Jersey get about 67 cents to 70 cents back for every dollar sent. So these red moocher states, it's nice that they take, and then turn around and want to stick it to people in my district, hardworking middle-class families in my district. I think it's absurd. And I've always said to them, listen, why don't you not take a nickel more than you put into the federal government, and then we can have that conversation. In the meantime, it is absurd to hurt our cops and teachers and firefighters in Jersey and in the tri-state area. So that's what I say, Wolf. I mean, they should really look in the mirror.
On another sensitive issue, Congressman, the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, also says the bill would cut an estimated $625 billion from Medicaid, largely through new work requirements that, despite President Trump repeatedly claiming Medicaid wouldn't be, in his word, touched. What's your reaction to that?
Again, I'm very confused by that, right? You got the president saying one thing. He flip-flopped yesterday on SALT, as we were talking about. He's all over the place on Medicaid. Their party is too, which is why they're fighting. I think if you're a senior and looking at this, or you have a child who's on Medicaid and gets health care that way, I don't know how you'd ever support what they're doing, which is why they're having such a big fight. About 80,000 people in my district who depend on Medicaid, seniors and children. They rely on SNAP for food and school breakfast and school lunch, and they're going to rip that away from them. I don't understand, again, how they could think that this is going to be good for them. All it does is that with this extremist policy is hurt families who need help the most. And I'm talking about seniors, I'm talking about children, I'm talking about women's health care they're trying to take away, talking about obviously investments in alternative energy they're trying to take away. They actually want to raise taxes on people with electric vehicles. They want to take away people who are trying to make their homes more energy efficient. They want to take away support tax credits for that. So they're raising taxes on people, sticking it to seniors, sticking it to hardworking families, and of course, really going after children. Again, this is why they're fighting like they are, Wolf told. In the middle, all throughout the night, they're screaming at each other, the extremists versus other extremists, because they can't figure out how to move forward.